Today's video is going to be about Manic Panic in the color Enchanted Forest. I have my swatches labeled 1 through 12, but that is not synonymous with hair levels. The numbers are just to help us keep track during the video. So I'll be taking the dye directly from the container and I'll put it at the top of each swatch. Some people do like to dilute their dyes, so I will be putting the diluted version at the bottom of each swatch. I do just want to say that everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take dye differently. The only virgin swatch I have is going to be the number 4 black swatch. Virgin hair usually doesn't take and doesn't hold semi-permanent dyes as well, so my video might not be as accurate for you, especially if your hair has not been chemically treated. Either way, it's always best to do as much research as possible when dyeing your hair. For the diluted section, it's going to sound like a lot, but we're doing a 12:1 ratio. So that's 12 parts of diluter, 1 part of the dye. The dye is very pigmented, which is why I did such a big ratio. I usually use like teaspoons and tablespoons. So if you're using smaller parts, it shouldn't seem like so much dye. So now that these are all saturated, I'm going to let them sit for about 3 hours. Once they are done, I will rinse them out, and once they are dry, I will meet you back here. This seems to be a pretty pigmented dye. I would say I notice a difference on all of them except number 4, which is black, so that makes sense. For the direct dye portion on number 5, and I would say number 6 too, it darkened the hair quite a bit, so much so that it almost looks black as well, especially on number 5. You can definitely tell that the hair is green from 7 and onward. And then I would say 9 through 12 look closer to what I assume the color is meant to look like. Number 1 was originally that deep purple, and I was just curious to see if the green would cover the purple at all. On the direct dye portion for number 1, the color is very interesting. It's very dark and you can't see that much green. To me, it almost looks like a faded black. And then on the diluted portion, you can still see some purple, but it's not quite as warm as it used to be. Some of the strands look a little bit more blue too. So number 2, on both the direct dye and the diluted part, it definitely looks a lot more cool toned versus the blonder swatches. It does seem, especially on the diluted part, that the pink did cancel out a tiny bit of the green, but I would still say it looks green. And then number 3, it actually does look pretty similar to number 6. I'd say number 6 took the green a little bit more, which makes sense because number 3 had some red in it, but overall they're very close in how they took the dye. As for comparisons, I have 3 different dyes that I wanted to compare to this one. I was gonna try and do least similar to most similar. The first comparison I wanted to do was Lunar Tides in the color Juniper Green. This is comparable to number 12, 11, 10, 9, number 8, number 7, number 6, and number 2. Keep in mind, when I did the Juniper green, I was still doing 2 separate diluted parts, whereas now I just do 1 diluted part. So I hope it's pretty clear on camera, but in person, Juniper green is a lot warmer of a green. It definitely has a lot more of a yellow tone to it. For number 6, it did deepen the hair a little bit, but compared to Enchanted Forest definitely darkened the hair a lot more. The next comparison I want to do is Punky Color in the color Alpine green. This is comparable to number 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and 2. So the Alpine green is a little bit more cool toned than the Juniper green from Lunar Tides, but it's not quite as cool toned as the Enchanted Forest. So my thought was that maybe on number 7 and 8, this one would look a little bit similar to 7 and 8, which I would say it does, at least on the direct dye portion. Next to each other, I can see that the Enchanted Forest is still a little bit more cool toned, but if they weren't right next to each other, I would say it's a little bit harder to tell the difference. I'd say the biggest difference is with the diluted portion. I don't remember the ratio I used for Alpine green. It might be the same, it might not, I can't remember, but the Enchanted Forest definitely did a really good job dyeing the diluted portion too. But I will say, I wonder if maybe it is the cool tone or the little bit more blue in the Enchanted Forest that helps to dye the ends. Because in my experience, it seems like making bluish greens pigmented dyes is really easy because a lot of brands have that, whereas like more truer greens aren't usually as pigmented. The number 6 swatch does look almost black as well, but the diluted part pretty much looks almost the same as it did before. It probably is a little bit more of a green tinge than it was, but compared to the Enchanted Forest, it looks brown. So I'm thinking this might be the most similar comparison we'll do today, and that is Lime Crime in the color Sea Witch. This is comparable to number 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 2, and 1. I just looked at the camera and I've noticed that Lime Crime Sea Witch is picking up a lot more green on the camera, but in person, these two dyes really do look almost the same. The biggest difference, I would say, is the darkness of Enchanted Forest. That one does definitely run a little bit darker than the Lime Crime, but as you get down the strand and you see the diluted pieces, to me they do really look very, very similar. I would say on number 8, the center diluted portion for Sea Witch looks a little bit more similar to the Enchanted Forest diluted section. I was going to say that to me the only real difference is how dark the dye is. So for example, if you did want a darker dye, I would suggest the Manic Enchanted Forest, and then, you know, if you wanted it just a little bit lighter and you didn't want to have to dilute it, definitely go with Sea Witch, because I remember them both being very pigmented. Since the camera is picking up on a little bit more green for Lime Crime, maybe that is a testament to the undertones in the dyes. While to me they both look like a bluish green, that might mean that Sea Witch has a tad bit more green in it. Now that we've done our comparisons, let's get into the close-ups. And I do just want to say quickly that the close-ups are filmed with natural lighting, as well as the pictures that you see at the end of this video. I hope this video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out. Just remember, I only do dyes that do not test on animals. Thank you so much to my patrons, and thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.